They kicked me out on my birthday with no warning. Then I discovered I secretly owned the company they tried to erase me from. I turned 27 on a Thursday morning with no party, no candle, and not a single person in that house who seemed to remember. At 6:42 a.m., someone knocked on the guest house door with a dull, deliberate rhythm that made my stomach tighten before I even stood up. When I opened it, my father was standing there, rolled up sleeves, sun not fully risen behind him, looking like he was ready to fix a fence or tear one down. He didn't say good morning, didn't ask how I slept, just looked me square in the face and said, "Come to the main house. We need to talk." I followed him without asking questions, barefoot, barely awake, heart racing with a kind of panic I hadn't felt in years. The path through the garden felt colder than usual, though it hadn't rained. The back door was already open like they'd been waiting. The kitchen was too quiet. I hadn't stepped inside the main house in over 10 days, not since my brother Ryan came back from Seattle and somehow became the center of everything again. Toast was in the air. So was coffee. My mother sat at the table in a pale blouse, sipping from her mug like it was just another weekday. Like the last time she spoke to me hadn't been in passing, about a missed recycling bin. I didn't see a gift. No card. No breakfast spread. Just one thing out of place. The old brown suitcase leaning near the front door. Mine. The one with my initials stitched into the leather flap. The same one I used when I left for college nearly a decade ago. I looked at the bag, then at them, then back again. Neither of them moved. My mother didn't smile. She didn't even blink when she said, "You're 27 now, Camille. It's time." I remember just standing there, confused, my mouth slightly open but no sound coming out. I wasn't even angry yet. I was still waiting for some kind of reason to make this moment make sense. Then my dad added, almost like an afterthought, "Ryan's going to need the space. He's launching something new. He'll be moving into the guest house today." I wanted to ask where they expected me to go, but the question caught in my throat and dissolved into nothing. They'd packed the suitcase without telling me. Folded my clothes, my sketchbooks, the laptop I kept beside my bed. My mother stood up, walked to the door, and zipped it the rest of the way. "Your essentials are in here. We figured that would save you time," she said with a kind of distant efficiency that made me feel like I was being let go from a job I never applied for in the first place. I waited for someone to soften, to say they'd help me find a place or at least call me a cab. Instead, my father opened the door without ceremony, as if this was an agreed-upon plan everyone but me had signed off on weeks ago. When the door shut behind me, it clicked like the final punctuation on a sentence I hadn't known was ending. I walked until I hit the next block, gripping the suitcase handle so tightly my knuckles ached. My body moved like it didn't trust my brain to keep up. Step after step, not fast, just consistent, like muscle memory was stronger than heartbreak. I didn't cry. Not then. Not at the stoplight. Not at the corner gas station where I stopped to use the bathroom and wash my face. The truth is, it didn't start that morning. It had been unraveling for years, just so quietly I didn't recognize the shape of what was being taken. Ryan is younger than me by 3 years, but you'd never know it by the way they treated him. He was always the golden boy, the one with ideas and projects and dreams that didn't need to be finished to be praised. I was the girl who colored inside the lines, showed up on time, kept things together. When he played soccer, my mom was in the bleachers rain or shine, yelling like she was paid to be there. When I painted a mural for the high school library during my freshman year, no one even asked to see it. I remember waiting after school for someone to show up, anyone, just one of them. No one did. They said they were slammed that week. He went to school in San Francisco, an art tech startup program that cost more per semester than my entire degree at Tucson State. They covered his tuition, apartment, gave him a used Volvo, and sent care packages like he was off saving the world. I got scholarships, took night classes, worked double shifts waiting tables just to pay for textbooks I couldn't afford to keep after finals. When I graduated, they offered to let me move into the guest house, said I could stay as long as I kept things respectful and paid a small rent. I agreed. I didn't ask for more. Ryan came back 2 years later with nothing but a box of merchandise samples and a slide deck. He said he had a vision, and my dad gave him $20,000 to launch a clothing line that folded in 4 months. My mom cleared out the garage so he could have an office. They catered a launch party with printed banners and a custom playlist. I helped him design his logo. I offered to fix his pitch deck and didn't charge him for the hours I spent editing. He never even said thank you. I overheard my father once on the phone. He said, "Ryan's the one we're building for. Camille's fine. She's stable. Stable. Like a bridge. Like a filing cabinet. Like something you trust will still be there when everyone else is exhausted." I used to think maybe that would count for something. That being steady, showing up, working hard would one day earn me a place at the table. But that morning, when they zipped my suitcase and opened the door without looking back, I realized I'd never been invited to the table at all. The motel room smelled like old disinfectant and desperation. I swiped the key card 3 times before the door clicked open with a groan. Room 112. The wall buzzed faintly from the soda machine next door, and the carpet was the color of bruised peaches. I dropped the suitcase at the foot of the bed, but didn't open it right away. I just sat there, one hand still on the handle, as if I didn't yet believe I was allowed to let go. Eventually, I bent down, unzipped the main pocket, and sifted through the neat layers, shirts folded, socks paired, everything packed with eerie precision like someone had practiced doing it. There was a flat envelope tucked inside the front lining. No stamp, just my name, Camille, in a handwriting I hadn't seen in over a decade. My grandfather's. Theodore died when I was 16, but I still remember how his hands moved when he sketched, how he held his pencil like a scalpel. He was an architect before he retired, the kind of man who believed in blueprints and balance, who told me once, "People think buildings are made of steel. They're not. They're made of clarity." When I was 15, he gave me an envelope and said, "Not until you're 27. Not a day sooner." I had tucked it away inside that suitcase years ago, forgotten it was even there. I held it now, unopened, my name staring back at me like a challenge. I wasn't sure I wanted to read it. Not here, not like this, in a motel that smelled like wet towels and last chances. But something in me needed to know if anyone had ever seen me clearly. I slid my thumb beneath the flap and pulled the letter out. There were 2 pages, typed, signed in blue ink. "Dear Camille," it began. "If you're reading this, then you've turned 27. And that means the terms we set are now yours to claim." I felt something shift in my chest. I kept reading. The second page of the letter was heavier in tone, measured like every word had been placed with a ruler, like my grandfather knew how delicate this would be and didn't want a single phrase misunderstood. He talked about the company he built from nothing, back in 1954, starting with 1 pickup truck, 3 contracts, and an office above a bakery in Prescott. I remembered that building, cracked brick, faded green trim around the windows, the ghost of an old sign still visible if the sunlight hit at the right angle. He wrote about how he poured his life into that company, not for glory or control, but because he believed something lasting should carry integrity through every beam and nail. He said my father had expanded the business in some impressive ways, but also narrowed it, turned it into a profit machine with no room for vision, no place for people like me. "You see differently, Camille," he wrote. "You always have. I saw it early. You notice patterns, spacing, color relationships before most people even know what they're looking at. That's not just talent. It's precision, and precision is what most people overlook in a world obsessed with volume." I must have read that paragraph 10 times, just tracing the words like they could rewrite my past. He continued, explaining that 10 years earlier, when I was 17, he made arrangements to allocate a portion of his ownership to me. It wasn't symbolic, wasn't sentimental. It was a legal, notarized transfer that took effect on my 27th birthday regardless of circumstances or consent from anyone else. I didn't need their permission. I didn't even need to tell them. I was already on the books. 17%. Not a minority stake they could erase. Not a favor. Real ownership, with rights and dividends, and, most importantly, a vote. Along with the letter was the original legal filing. I recognized the law firm, Marshall and Braithwaite, because I'd seen their letterhead on company invoices and tax papers years ago when I briefly handled accounts payable as a side gig during college. Attached to it was a business card, crisp, no creases, no fading, still stiff like it had been tucked away just yesterday. Elaine Madden, Estate Counsel. There was a short note in my grandfather's handwriting. "If they never told you, call her." That sentence hit me harder than any line in the entire letter. If they never told you. Not if you forgot. Not when the time is right. He knew. He knew they might hide it. He knew how they operated. And they did. 10 years. 10 years they let me think I was disposable. 10 years they cashed my rent checks and asked nothing about what I was building. 10 years they let me stay invisible while they poured everything into Ryan. I sat back on the bed and stared at the water-stained ceiling, my hands shaking with outrage. No, something colder, cleaner. It was clarity. It was the kind of clarity my grandfather used to talk about, the kind that doesn't scream, doesn't throw things, just realigns everything quietly in your head until you can finally see. The next morning, I walked 2 blocks to a gas station convenience store and bought a plastic folder, cheap blue with a cloudy front sleeve. Then I changed into the same jeans and blazer from the day before, wrapped my documents in a towel so they wouldn't bend, and found a payphone that still worked near a laundromat. Elaine's assistant picked up. She sounded polite, almost too formal for the line to have come from such a small office. I gave my name. There was silence, just a few seconds, but I could feel her recalibrating something on the other end. "Camille," she repeated. "Please hold." The hold music was soft jazz, the kind that loops every 42 seconds and makes you feel like you're trapped in an elevator. Then a voice, warm, confident, came through. "Ms. Jameson," Elaine said. "I've been waiting for your call." I had no idea what she looked like, but her tone told me I could trust her, the way someone trained in storm control speaks when they've already seen worse. She gave me the address. Her office was above a stationery shop in the downtown district, the kind of place you walk past 100 times and never notice unless you're looking for it. The staircase smelled like old wood and fresh ink. Elaine met me at the door, early 50s, cropped hair, black slacks, a wool cardigan with a pearl clasp. Her handshake was quick but steady. Her eyes held no pity, just readiness. Inside her office, there were law books lining one wall and a small framed photo of a golden retriever beside a ceramic pencil cup. She gestured to the chair across from her desk, and I handed her the folder without saying anything. She reviewed the letter and documents, nodding every few seconds, flipping pages like someone who already knew what they would say but needed to see the proof herself. When she reached the card, she looked up at me. "These are the originals," she said. "They're valid, binding, and unaltered." Then she tapped on her keyboard and pulled up my grandfather's file. "You've been on record for 10 years. Your parents received annual notifications. They signed for 2 of them, then stopped responding." My mouth went dry. They never said a word. "I know," she replied quietly. "But you're here now, and that means we can finally move forward." She spent the next half hour walking me through everything. What the stake included, what my role could mean if I wanted to exercise it. There were options. I could be silent, just collect dividends, let it ride in the background. Or I could activate my voting rights, demand access to financials, attend meetings, block decisions if needed. The company wasn't public, but it had a board, and my voice would count if I chose to speak. I asked her what would happen if I stepped forward. She looked me dead in the eye and said, "They'll either fight you or fear you. Maybe both. But they won't be able to ignore you again." When I left her office, I carried a leather-bound folder with the firm's seal embossed in gold across the front. It didn't feel like a weapon. It felt like a compass. I didn't go back to the motel. I didn't call my parents or check the guest house. I found a quiet cafe with a password-protected Wi-Fi connection and decent cinnamon rolls, sat in the back corner booth, opened my laptop, and typed studio rentals near me. I wasn't looking for luxury. I wanted light. A lockable door. White walls. Something I could fill with my name. By sunset, I had an appointment to tour an old printmaker's loft on the east side. It had been sitting vacant for months. They offered me a discount for taking it as is. I paid with the first dividend check that had quietly been accumulating for 3 months, unclaimed. The following week, I bought a desk, a corkboard, and a standing lamp from a salvage warehouse. No one helped me move. No one offered a ride. I carried each piece up the narrow stairs by myself, piece by piece, hand by hand. I didn't even bring boxes. Just that same old suitcase and the new folder Elaine had given me. I unpacked slowly, hung 3 of my old designs on the wall, drank cheap black tea while I rearranged furniture until the room finally felt like mine. Then I opened a new document on my laptop and typed out the name. Camille Design Works. Not my last name. Not the company's name. Just mine. Something shifted that night. Not loudly. Not all at once. But enough to know I was never going back. 6 months later, the studio smelled like pencil lead, paper, and sun-warmed pine. The kind of scent that belongs only to quiet spaces built with your own hands. The kind that doesn't need to shout to remind you you're safe. My work had gone from side gigs and filler jobs to full rebrands, missized campaigns, design consultations with real clients who paid on time and didn't haggle like they were buying a blender at a garage sale. I stopped explaining my rates. I stopped apologizing for charging what the work deserved. When I handed over proposals now, I didn't look down at my shoes. I looked people in the face. Camille Design Works wasn't fancy, not by any stretch. I still used a scratched-up second-hand monitor and drank instant coffee from a chipped green mug. But it was mine. Every invoice, every light bulb, every hand-drawn draft came from this room. And no one could take it from me. I hadn't heard from my parents since that morning outside the guest house. No birthday call. No check-in. No thin apology layered under a casual question. Silence, thick and deliberate. Then, one night in early spring, my phone rang just after 9. The number was unfamiliar, but something in me knew who it was before I even answered. I let it buzz 3 times before I picked up. Camille. It was Ryan. His voice didn't sound like it usually did. It wasn't slick or amused or full of stretched-out charm. It was breathless and low, like he'd been walking in circles for hours. I didn't know if you'd pick up, he added. I didn't say anything, just let the weight of the silence work its way through him. He cleared his throat, like he needed courage just to keep going. I need help, he said, voice cracking slightly. He launched into it without waiting for permission, like if he stopped talking I might hang up. The app failed completely. Not just a bug, not just bad feedback. Full crash. They lost their investors. The hosting company froze their back-end access after payment bounced. And worst of all, the company, our family's company, was used as part of the collateral in the loan agreement. The board had questions. The bank had demands. And Ryan had panic dripping from every word he said. I stood by the window, one hand on the glass, the other still gripping the phone. The streetlight outside flickered once, then held. The light slid across my studio floor like it was trying to remind me where I was. He kept talking. My parents were in shock. My father was trying to handle it quietly, but their influence was shrinking by the hour. The company accountant flagged the misuse of funds. If the board pushed back, if the press got wind of it, it could collapse the entire structure my grandfather had spent a lifetime building. They know, he said finally. About the shares. About you. Still, I said nothing. I didn't know who else to call, he whispered. That was the part that hit hardest. Not the desperation. Not even the failure. It was the way he phrased it. I didn't know who else to call. Like I'd just been downgraded to last resort. Like the only reason he remembered I existed was because every other door had slammed shut in his face. I didn't give him an answer. I didn't even say goodbye. I let the silence stretch one last time before I hung up. The sound of the disconnection was soft, but final, like a breath leaving the room. The next night, the house line rang. The one I hadn't heard from since I left. That number wasn't programmed into my phone, but I knew it instantly. I didn't answer until the 6th ring. Camille. My mother's voice. Stiff but strained. I heard you spoke with Ryan, she said carefully, like it wasn't a conversation but a negotiation. I didn't confirm or deny it. We're going through something right now, she continued, almost pleading but still holding on to that familiar tone of authority. It's affecting all of us. I didn't respond. I wanted to see how long she'd circle around before naming what she really wanted. The company, she finally said, is under a great deal of pressure. Your father is trying to contain it, but we need help. Legal, financial, someone who understands the internal structure. Then the moment I knew was coming finally arrived. We know about the shares, she said. We know what your grandfather left you. I waited. Let the words settle like dust in a quiet room. We were hoping you'd step in, she added. Help us protect what he built. I asked the question I'd been carrying in my chest for months. Is this the same company you told me I'd never be a part of? There was silence, Not for seconds. For long enough that I thought she might actually hang up. Camille, she said finally, don't make this harder than it is. I'm not, I said calmly. I'm just remembering clearly. That's when my father took the phone. His voice didn't shake. It never did. He still spoke like someone used to being listened to, used to getting final words in rooms full of younger men. But this time, there was something brittle under it, like the foundation had finally cracked beneath the surface. Your mother and I made mistakes, he said. But now isn't the time to dwell on resentment. Of course it wasn't. Now was the time I was useful. We're asking for your help, he said. I turned to look at the plaque beside the studio door. The one I installed without ceremony. The one that bore the name I gave myself when they told me I didn't matter. Camille Design Works. No legacy. No permission. Just truth. I'm not angry, I told him. And it was the truth. Then you'll help, he said quickly. No, I replied. I just remember what you said. There was a beat of confusion on the line. What do you mean? I let the silence hold him in place before I answered. You told me I wasn't family, I said. And then, without waiting for a reply, I ended the call. The sound of that call ending didn't echo in my space. It was absorbed by the bookshelves I built, by the floor I swept, by the work I made from nothing but skill and time and the voice they never heard. That night, I took a photo of the plaque. Just the name, just the brass, just proof. I sent it to my father's number. No message, no caption. I never got a reply, but I didn't need one. The weeks after that call were quieter than I expected, which somehow made everything feel even more surreal. No texts, no emails, no last-ditch attempts to guilt me into changing my mind. Just the kind of silence that feels too calculated to be peaceful, like the pause before a storm that isn't quite done gathering its weight. I didn't check the company's website. I didn't read local business journals. I didn't ask around. If something was crumbling, I didn't need to watch it fall piece by piece. Instead, I worked. I poured every leftover ache and sharp edge into projects that had nothing to do with family or legacy or redemption. Small businesses with real goals, real needs. A wine distributor out of Colorado. A sustainable skincare brand run by a woman who emailed thank yous in full paragraphs. An architecture firm in Chicago that I'd cold-pitched a year earlier when I was still begging people to take a chance. They reached out again, this time asking for a full brand overhaul. I sent them a rate sheet, doubled the figure from my original quote. They accepted within 24 hours and wired the deposit that same afternoon. In between projects, I took long walks without music. Sometimes I didn't go anywhere in particular. I just needed to move in a way that reminded me I wasn't waiting for anything. Not for them. Not for permission. Not even for healing. I didn't need closure. I needed forward motion. And then, right as spring turned to the kind of early summer that smells like hot concrete and faded jasmine, it happened. Ryan called again. I almost didn't answer, but curiosity has a way of loosening decisions you think are firmly made. His name lit up my screen like a pop quiz I never signed up for. I didn't speak first. I wanted to hear how he'd begin. Camille, he said. He sounded exhausted. Not in a performative way. In the way people sound when they finally accept something they can't control. She's gone, he added, almost like an afterthought. I had to ask who. His voice cracked slightly when he answered. Lena. She left 2 nights ago. He didn't cry, but his breath caught between sentences like every word was a shard he had to swallow. She said I turned into someone she couldn't recognize. That all I do is chase fires I helped start. I let the words hang. I didn't interrupt. I didn't console. He kept talking. The board held a vote. My father was officially removed from his executive seat, moved to an advisory position with no decision-making power. Financial damage was worse than they admitted. Loans defaulted. Creditors circling. A buyer was circling the company with just enough leverage to force a sale. The legacy, he said, was turning into an invoice. I didn't speak until he asked me the question I expected. Do you think it's too late? And I said the only honest thing I could. I think it was too late the day they decided you were the future and I was the backup plan. He didn't argue, didn't defend, just whispered, yeah, and hung up without saying goodbye. The next day, I got an email from one of the board's junior members. She wasn't one of the old family loyalists. She wasn't tied to my father or my brother by years of shared events or fading photos in walnut frames. Her message was polite, professional, and direct. She wanted to meet. Just coffee. Just a conversation. She'd read the ownership filings. She knew who I was. I almost said no, but I met her anyway. She was younger than I expected, early 30s maybe, sharp blazer, no small talk. She said the company could survive, but not with the same people trying to rebuild what they never understood in the first place. She said I had options: sell my shares and walk away with a clean payout, or come in quietly, stabilize things, and then choose when and how I leave. She didn't ask for an answer right away. She slid her card across the table and said, "Just don't let someone else write the ending." I didn't take the offer. I didn't sell, either. I held my stake like a spine, quiet and upright. Weeks passed. Summer settled in like thick syrup. My studio stayed cool thanks to the old skylight that somehow never leaked. I kept working. The Chicago firm offered a long-term contract. I hired a part-time assistant, a recent grad named Taylor who asked smart questions and didn't talk too much. She noticed everything. She reminded me of myself at 22, except she didn't apologize for being ambitious. Then one night, while I was sketching mock-ups in my notebook, my mother showed up outside the studio. She knocked twice, then stepped back like she wasn't sure if she wanted me to answer. I let her stand there for a full minute before opening the door. Her face looked older than I remembered. Not just in years, but in layers. She didn't ask to come in. She didn't comment on the space or the name on the plaque beside the door. She just looked at me like she was trying to find the version of me she once understood. "I thought you might want to hear it from me," she said. "The company sold. This morning. They're rebranding." I nodded once. I didn't ask for details. She kept going. "Your father hasn't spoken much since the vote. Ryan's leaving for Denver next week. He says he needs a fresh start." I waited for the reason she was really there. She glanced toward the plaque again, then back at me. "We didn't see what you were building," she said. "That's not an excuse. It's just the truth." There was a part of me that wanted to ask why it took everything falling apart for her to say it. Why she hadn't stood up for me when I was 14 and painting murals no one came to see. Why she didn't stop them from packing my life into a suitcase and telling me it was time to go. But I didn't ask. I already knew the answer. She wasn't built for confrontation. She was built for order. And I had been chaos to their plan from the beginning. I didn't invite her in. I didn't ask her to leave, either. We stood in that quiet moment like two women carrying different ruins. Then she reached into her purse, pulled out a small envelope, and held it out. "It's not much," she said, "but I thought you should have it." Inside was a photo I hadn't seen in years. Me and my grandfather, sitting at his drafting table. My hand smudged with pencil lead, his arm around my shoulder, both of us looking at the same page. I took the photo, not because I forgave her, not because I was ready to soften, but because memory, when held honestly, can sometimes heal what history distorts. She didn't say goodbye when she left, just turned and walked back into the night like someone who finally understood there were doors she couldn't walk through anymore. After she left, I framed the photo and hung it beside my desk, not as a tribute, as a record, as proof that someone once saw me clearly before anyone else bothered to look. Later that week, I updated the website. New logo, new projects, a short paragraph that ended with one line. "In stillness, I built. No legacy required." 3 months passed after the company's sale, and by then, nothing they did could touch me anymore. I wasn't watching from the sidelines. I was building on different soil, on ground they never touched. My name wasn't attached to their collapse in any public way, and I preferred it that way. When people asked where I came from, I talked about the work I'd done, the clients I'd helped, the designs I'd finished that made people pause and say they felt seen. I didn't mention the family name. I didn't owe it anything. Work got heavier in the good way. Referrals came more often. A publishing house in Austin reached out after seeing my portfolio. A tech startup in Raleigh asked for a complete UI redesign. I had to start scheduling meetings 2 weeks out because I didn't want to compromise my pace. Camille Design Works had turned from a personal rebirth into an actual brand people wanted to work with. I hired a second assistant, a woman named Mara who brought baked goods into the office without being asked and always listened more than she spoke. Taylor trained her. I stood back and realized I had a team now. One afternoon, I came back from a client meeting to find a small package on my desk. No return address, just a name, my grandfather's, and the company logo from decades ago burned into the corner. I opened it slowly, careful not to rip anything, my heart pushing harder than it should have. Inside was a sketchbook, the leather kind he used to carry under his arm. It smelled like pencil graphite and dry wood. Tucked inside was a single folded sheet. One of his old renderings, hand-drawn in ink and blue pencil, dated 5 years before I was born. A post was stuck in the corner with my name in block letters. I stood there holding it like it might dissolve if I blinked. No one ever admitted to sending it. I never asked. Sometimes the past doesn't apologize. It just shows up unexpectedly and says, "Here, you still mattered." A few weeks later, the last thread snapped, so quietly I almost missed it. Ryan posted a photo on social media. New city, new office space. A caption that said something about clean slates and vision boards. I didn't click on his profile. I didn't need to. A clean slate only works if you understand what stained it the first time. My mother called once more in early fall. She didn't ask for anything, just told me they'd sold the house, downsized to a small place in Flagstaff. My father wasn't sleeping well. He'd started walking alone in the mornings, something he never used to do. She said they talked about me sometimes, wondered what I was doing. I didn't fill in the blanks. I let them stay wondering. By then, I'd launched a design mentorship program for college seniors. One-on-one sessions, portfolio reviews, strategy coaching for students whose professors told them they were good but never told them how to be better. I picked 3 students that first round, all women, all overlooked. I saw pieces of myself in their restraint, in the way they framed their work with disclaimers instead of pride. I helped them rewrite those habits. One day, after a long session with a girl named Ren who reminded me a little too much of how I used to be, I stayed late in the studio, sitting near the door with a cup of strong tea and a notebook I didn't plan to write in. Outside, the city was quieter than usual. The streetlights hummed, the occasional dog barked blocks away. I looked at the brass plaque again, the one by the entrance I'd installed on my first day here. Camille Design Works. In stillness, I built. There were no fireworks, no grand recognition, no crowd clapping me across a stage. But I'd made something from nothing, and every hour spent in this studio felt like stitching a seam the world had once tried to tear open. My work wasn't just pretty. It was useful. It solved problems. It gave shape to people's ideas and made them feel sharper, more possible. That mattered more than applause ever could. Then, one final thing happened. So strange it almost felt scripted. A reporter from a local business magazine emailed me. Said she was doing a piece on women-founded design firms in Arizona. Wanted to feature Camille Design Works. She mentioned she'd spoken to several of my clients, all of whom had nothing but praise. I asked her how she found me. She said, "Someone mailed us your name and work samples with a handwritten note that said." She changed everything quietly. No signature, just that sentence. I agreed to the interview, sat with her at a cafe, and talked about my process, my values, the difference between designing for impact and designing for attention. When the piece came out, it ran with a headline that said, "Camille, the architect of quiet power." I didn't post about it, didn't even frame it. I folded the magazine and tucked it behind the bookshelf, like a souvenir I didn't need to show anyone. And then, for the first time since that birthday when they packed my life into a single suitcase, I took a vacation. A real one. I closed the studio for 10 days, flew to the coast, stayed in a cottage with no Wi-Fi, no plans, and more books than drawers. I walked every morning. I cooked every night. I read until my eyes hurt. And on the last night, I opened my sketchbook and started drawing again, something for myself. Not for work, not for approval, just because the pencil felt right in my hand. I came back rested, whole, ready. So this is where I leave it. Not with revenge, not with a perfect ending tied up in red ribbon, just with space, with a door I opened for myself, with my name beside it, and no one left to tell me I didn't earn it. Camille Design Works. In stillness, I built. And when the silence finally held me, it didn't feel empty. It felt earned.